Committee on Children and Seniors. We've got a busy agenda today. We are going to do things a little bit differently than we usually do. We're going to have some discussion and possible action on the bill that we heard yesterday first, because then we need to know, following that, how much time that we will be able to allow for testimony. With that said, there are a lot of people, a lot of folks here who have signed up to give oral testimony. We will have a timer. Vice Chair Esau is going to be the timer, and we will have to cut you off. If any of you would like to get together and designate a couple of spokespersons and then move your testimony to written only, that would be a better way to make your points, to allow some time to make your points. Otherwise, the time is going to be divided up between all the conferees, and we may be down to just having a minute or two to make your points. But we will allow time at the end for questions. So we'll have proponent testimony, and then we'll have questions, and we'll have opponent testimony. And we'll try to keep those times equal. So that, with that said, we'll get into into our agenda. Are there any requests for bill introductions? Okay. Seeing none, we have House Bill 2525 to consider today. What might be the committee's wishes? Representative Esau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we pass HB 2525 favorably for passage.
Okay, it's been moved by Representative Esau and seconded by Representative Neighbor to pass favorably. For comments and discussion, Representative Esau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought that it would be helpful to the committee if I clarified something that I don't think came up much in testimony, having to do with the requirements for attending school and not having to work. And it's my understanding that the way the bill is written, it includes an amendment that I made last year when we had a similar bill, that if you were attending school trying to get a GED or your high school diploma and you were making progress towards graduation, that you would have 48 months where you would not have to meet the work requirements as long as you were meeting the education requirement. And post-secondary, if you were working towards a degree or a certificate and taking at least 6 hours that count towards the graduation requirement, you would have 72 months where you could be working on that education component and not have to meet the work requirements. Otherwise, you do have to meet the work requirements. And that's my understanding of the bill and that portion of it. I just thought it would be helpful if you knew that.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you help me out? You say you either had to work 20 hours or take 6 credit hours to be qualified for the program? Is it an or statement there?
Representative Esau.
It's my understanding, the reviser can correct me if I have misunderstood the bill, but it's my understanding that if you weren't going to school, you would have to meet the work requirements. Right. That we're doing this in lieu of spending your time at work. You would be working towards your education so that you could.
Jesse, did you have any clarification on that? Nothing? That was correct? Okay. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Wagner.
Given the fact that, of course, that we basically debated the same bill, a year ago, I kind of know a bit the lay of the land here. But I will say, I do think it's important that as much as the testimony yesterday, the aspect of, some person in a family situation where it would be unwise to actually contact, the non-parental spouse because of some potential domestic violence. There already is an opt-out in the current law, and I think the whole point of having work requirements, such as it would be, or that people need to cooperate with getting child support, which is a known element in supporting, families that have split up and with the parent who has the kids. I think we have actually a pretty good system in place right now, and I do not think this is an improvement and will oppose the bill.
Further discussion? Okay, Representative Esau, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do
Representative Penn.
I did want to just raise one concern. I was looking through the bill trying to find out exactly where the language is, and maybe the Vice's office can help me understand that a little bit better in this new version that we have. Going back to Representative Wagner talking about that concern that we have for the custodial parent, that if they want to opt out, where is that language in there? Is it mandating it with shall, or does it leave it optional with a may? That would be my only consideration.
Jesse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Penn, when it is talking about removing the requirement for non-cooperation with child support enforcements for child care subsidy and food assistance, what it does is it just no longer makes those applicants or participants ineligible. So if the language is to remain, and this is specifically on page 5, if it's to remain as is and the bill does not pass, then it just renders those who are not cooperating ineligible to apply or receive that assistance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that the explanation.
Representative Esau for a question.
Would that be something that could be addressed in rules and regs, perhaps, that says that DCF would be allowed to ask if they would like to go that direction instead of shall? I'm just wondering, I'm assuming on the form, from everything I've understood, that it says that they must cooperate because otherwise they become ineligible. Is there a way that DCF could still allow them to cooperate?
Jesse.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair, Representative Esau. So when it renders them ineligible because of the non-cooperation, they can you repeat your question?
I will attempt to. Can DCF still use the same efforts that they're making now if the applicant is willing to be cooperative?
Madam Chair, Vice Chair Esau, it is something you could put in the statute to direct DCF to put in rules and regulation the option to continue child support enforcements and be eligible. But to be eligible for it, it just is no longer a requirement.
Is there any other discussion? Representative Penn.
And not to belabor the point, that was one of my chief concerns that I had actually, voiced and vocalized to our friends on both sides of the aisle. When we're looking at removing language and striking language out of this bill, there's concerns from my constituents that you don't have a mechanism by which you hold the non-custodial parent accountable for that responsibility that they brought into the world. We don't want to hurt the child. but I also want to be a good steward over taxpayer dollars. I would be more comfortable. I didn't have an opportunity today to bring down to the revisor's office this particular proposition and talk about bringing an amendment, but it's the pleasure of the chair. I don't know how to get that balloon in there, but I would like to offer that as an amendment. The language as deemed appropriate to offer DCF the option for the custodial parent to still cooperate by way of getting after that child support. Not mandating it, but giving them the option if they so choose.
So were you considering, and I will entertain this, will you, are you just wanting to change shall to may?
Check. That's it. And I don't know exactly which line or page that is, but that's the general gist that I'm getting after. Instead of striking all the language altogether, leaving it there and changing that shall directive declarative to a may optional, so that we put the custodial parent in the driver's seat to determine what is best for their family and leave the taxpayers some recourse to getting their just due as well.
Can you put that in the form of a motion?
Madam Chair, I have a motion for an amendment. I move that we add language in a form of a balloon amendment as appropriate to this bill that gives DCF the ability to make compliance or cooperation with child support authorities an option versus a mandate.
Is there a second? Representative Johnson?
Second the motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been moved by Representative Penn to amend, a second by Representative Johnson. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Representative Hoy.
I'm not completely sure where this is going to go or how it's going to read, but I just want to clarify my understanding because this is federal assistance and we are instituting additional parameters on these taxpayer dollars that come back to our state that the federal government doesn't require in order to access these funds. So I guess without seeing it, I'm struggling a bit to understand how it changes the intent of the bill. So I think I'm going to be in opposition, depending on, I'll keep hearing it out. Thank you.
You say without seeing it, you need to pull the bill up and get the line on it?
That would be helpful to know what line is being changed. Yes.
So the bill would be in your email from yesterday, or you've got it, copy of it. Jesse, could you give us the reference for that?
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you. So we are talking about two strikes on page 5, in particular lines 18 through 21 for child care subsidy. And then the reference for the food assistance program is lines 31 through 34.
So it would just remove the strikes.
If you were, Madam Chair, if Representative, if you were to remove those strikes, then you would require that those applying for or participating in child care subsidies or food assistance cooperate with child support enforcements. So that would be bringing it back to the original statute.
So that's why. So the amendment isn't removing the strikes, or it is removing the strikes.
As I recall, the motion was to allow DCF to have an option to allow those participating or applying to do child support enforcements, but I don't have the exact language if Fran does or the chair.
No, I don't have any specific language as far as, Representative Penn, do you want to elaborate?
I'm not given to making sausage in front of the committee, and I do apologize to the body for this right here. But Jesse, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I, with the reviser, you're saying that in line 18, paragraph 10, Delta 10 here, it says non-cooperation. You're saying that the language is struck through right now. If that is removed, what is the effect?
Yes, okay, so, or Madam Chair, Representative Penn, actually, so this is not a substantive change where it's striking out 18 through 20. So that is actually defining non-cooperation, which non-cooperation is already defined in 39702. So it's a redundancy in the statute right there. So the part you want to look at for the substantive change in the bill is going to be line 21, striking out the child care subsidy.
Okay, benefits non-cooperation.
Representative Hoy?
Okay, and I guess, I don't know, I think maybe the original bill doesn't prevent anybody from being able to still get child support and go for that. So I'm struggling over whether I think this amendment is necessary. Still, I'll hang in there and see if there's anything else comes out of this, but
Yeah, the custodial parent can cooperate at any point. Representative Penn?
My understanding as we heard the bill and we were discussing it yesterday was that these changes to it are removing that requirement. Is that my understanding correct? Which is why I'm raising the issue. The
Jesse?
first bill that we heard says that they may. The language that we're seeing here today that about to vote on says that they do not have to. As a matter of fact, it's a removal from that. And what I am trying to do is bring the two of those together.
Madam Chair, Representative Penn, as far as the language of may or shall, because the way it's just kind of worded, it states that you are ineligible for child care subsidies if you do not cooperate. And so if you do cooperate, only those who cooperate become eligible to receive those funds. And so that's how it's removing that requirement to be able to receive those funds when it's not requiring anyone to apply it generally.
Representative Penn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, and any of the leadership, just help me understand quite succinctly. The bill that we're about to vote on, does it remove that requirement that someone participate with child support services in order to receive these benefits? Does it remove that requirement?
Yes. Jesse?
Yes, so to be eligible for a child care subsidy, you have to cooperate with child support enforcements.
Okay. So if we vote yes on this bill, then that remains in place. That you must comply with child support requirements in order to receive these subsidies. I'm getting a no over there and I'm getting a yes over here.
Representative Esau?
I hope I clarify and not make it more confusing. The way the bill is written without your amendment, it removes the fact that if you don't comply, you don't qualify. And so you could still cooperate. You could still say, yes, go after him. That was part of my question. Would DCF still have the authority to work with you if you were so desirous to be able to do, which is what you're wanting to allow with your amendment? Because of how the statute got written here and what we're taking out, it's very confusing. You can't just change from shall to may because there's no shall. They're simply saying you don't qualify if you don't cooperate. And if we take that out, they can still cooperate if they so choose. They're not prevented from cooperating.
Representative Penn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And I'll close this off by reiterating the intent for the body of what my proposed conceptual amendment is, that we add language delineating quite clearly, succinctly, just adding it in because it's not a may or a shall change, that DCF reserves or has that right to make that an option. That's simply it.
Jesse, did you want to comment further?
Yes, Madam Chair, in regards to that, last time was mentioned Rules and Regs Authority. Is that remaining in the same motion, or?
I believe that was Representative Esau that mentioned rules and regs. Okay. Representative Penn, he closed, but I don't know that we were ready for closure yet. So Representative Ousley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And while I believe I understand the intent of the conceptual amendment, I think at this time, for fear that it could defeat the purpose of the bill without seeing it in writing in whole, I don't think I can support it at this time. But if the maker of the motion wanted to work upon a floor amendment, give it a little bit more time, I'd be entertained to see what language was drafted, not necessarily on the fly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion? Okay, Representative Penn, you've already closed. Do you have anything you want to add?
And thank you, Mr. Ranking, for that. We know that it's very, very difficult once something gets out of committee to get anything added onto the floor. A simple clause here saying that DCF can add language to make it an option for cooperation with child support agencies. That's literally what we're talking about. Insert it wherever it needs to go as deemed appropriate. That's the concept. That's the language. I close.
Okay, this is on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Chair's in doubt. All for the amendment, please raise your hand. Six. Hold them up again, please. 7. Opposed, please raise your hand. 5. Motion passes. So we'll direct Jesse to create wording for that to reflect the intent of the amendment proposed by Representative Penn. Okay, back on the bill, any discussion? Okay, Representative Esau, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that final clarification of how the amendment was, that it would simply make it cooperative. I understand where you're going with that. And I think we heard a lot of good testimony yesterday that explained the concerns and the need for this change in statute. And I shared the concerns of those who are uneasy with it as far as our good oversight of our taxpayer dollars. But I know that there are folks out there that are foregoing what we intended for them to have and support and help. And for that reason, I support the bill as amended and ask for your support.
Okay, what was House Bill 2525 has been moved to pass out favorably as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, the motion passes. Thanks, committee. Okay, we have 1 hour to have a hearing on House Bill 2524. We'll go ahead and get started. And we'll start out with asking, open the hearing with Jesse, having an overview of the bill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee. Jesse Pringle with the Reviser of Statutes Office. I will briefly go over the bill, and most specific questions, I'm guessing, can be answered by our larger than normal audience today. So House Bill 2524 is requiring the Secretary for Aging and Disability Services to regulate supplemental nursing services agencies in Kansas. So the first section of this bill defines some terms that are used throughout the act, most notably supplemental nursing service agencies, a person, such as, a natural or artificial person or a business, a healthcare facility, which includes medical facilities, adult care homes, which is already defined in the statutes, and many other terms such as controlling person, hospital, long-term care unit, nurse aide. In Section 2, the Secretary shall oversee supplemental nursing services agencies and exercise rules and regulations authority to carry out that oversight. The Secretary shall establish a system for reporting complaints against these supplemental nursing services agencies and its employees. Then in Section 3, it requires that any person who operates a supplemental nursing services agency to register each year with the Secretary, and that the applications have certain items be in it, such as the owners of the agencies, any corporations, documentation, compliance, records, and if the application does not have everything as required, then the Secretary is required to immediately deny the application. The agencies would pay a registration fee, and this registration would be only effective for the period of 1 year from the date that it is issued by the Secretary. Subsection E creates a Supplemental Nursing Services Agency Regulation Fund. That is where registration fees or violation fines would go. Section 4 contains the penalty provisions of this bill. So a subsection A lists the conditions, and Section 4 lists the conditions of registration, which require supplemental nursing services agencies perform criminal history record checks, retain records for 5 years, and organized, among other things. And the failure to comply with those provisions would subject the Supplemental Nursing Services Agency to revocation or non-renewal of its registration. And lastly, Section 5 would prohibit supplemental nursing services agencies from billing or receiving payments from adult care homes or hospital long-term care units above a specific set rate. The maximum allowable rate would include all charges for administrative fees, contract fees, or other special charges, in addition to the hourly rate for the supplied temporary nursing personnel. These agencies would be fined for a violation of this section, and such fines then would be submitted to that Supplemental Nursing Services Agency Regulation Fund created in Section 3. With that, I am open for any questions the committee has on House Bill 2524.
Committee, do we have questions for Jesse? Okay, seeing none, thank you. So we're going to divide the time in half for proponents and opponents. And right now we're looking at 2 minutes each. Unless we have people who decide to be written only along the way. Committee, did anyone have trouble accessing the testimony on the S file? Were you able to get that? Okay, I had to have my committee assistant show me how to find my S file, so I thought I'd offer help if anyone else needed it. Okay, see, I'm not the only one. So you open the file at the bottom and then go to 4 committees and then go to children and seniors and then to today's date. Okay. Up first for proponent, we have Rachel Monger with Leading Age Kansas. And by the way, We do have the timekeeper. Will that make a noise?
I don't know if it will make a noise.
So we're hoping it makes a noise and that we don't have to wave you down.
If I just wave it, then we'll know.
Thank you. Welcome back, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm Rachel Monger with Leading Age Kansas, the state association for nonprofit and faith-based aging services in the state. We want to talk about the effect that staffing agencies have beyond the walls of our nursing homes and why it is imperative for the state of Kansas to step in. Right now, staffing agencies do have providers and seniors over a barrel, as you will hear many times over today. But before long, staffing agencies could also have this legislature over a barrel too. All of the staffing agency charges you're going to hear about today, they will be folded into our Medicaid formula in the future, and the legislature will have to find a way to pay for it for years to come. And let's face it, you're going to have to do it with even more taxpayer dollars. House Bill 2524 is not a brand new unknown experiment. It is based on a Minnesota law passed in 2001 to address the same staffing agency issues we're discussing today. We have talked to our counterparts in Minnesota about this model for years, and they tell us that it's not perfect, but nothing is. It has, on the whole, been successful for the better part of 2 decades in that state for their long-term care providers, and we believe we need the same thing here in Kansas. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I cede my remaining time.
Thank you, Rachel. Tara Mays with Kansas Hospital Association. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Tara Mays with the Kansas Hospital Association, and on behalf of our 122 member hospitals, we really just want to thank this committee for spending time exploring this important topic. Our hospitals have utilized staffing agencies for decades to be able to ensure that we can meet the needs of patients across the state. Many of our hospitals have reported to us concerns about the rates that they are paying to staffing agencies during these very difficult and unprecedented times. In fact, many of our hospitals have reported paying rates up to 2 to 3 times pre-pandemic levels for staffing services. And they have voiced concern about the possibility of possible market exploitation. With more than 200 federal elected officials signing on to a letter raising those concerns with the Federal Trade Commission, with the White House and Congress, we appreciate the state legislature spending some time looking at House Bill 2524 and what can be done in Kansas. And while many other states are having similar conversations to the ones you all are having here today, our colleagues in hospital associations throughout the country and our hospitals throughout the state would highlight the need for additional oversight and transparency as is provided in House Bill 2524 as key solutions for state level policy. We would raise one potential unintended consequence in House Bill 2524, really just taking a state level approach to capping rates. We have heard from some of our hospitals that this section of the bill could discourage staffing agencies from sending our state very critically necessary healthcare workers at a crucial time. And while we prefer a federal approach to any idea of capping in that particular area, we stand in very strong support of the transparency components provided in this piece of legislation. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Perfect, 2 minutes. Linda Mowbray, Kansas Healthcare Association, Kansas Center for Assisted Living. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Linda Mowbray, Kansas Healthcare Association, Kansas Center for Assisted Living. If I might ask for just a brief point of personal privilege, I'd like to address the audience behind me.
Certainly.
Those of you who are healthcare workers that are here today, I see you, I recognize you, I want to know I thank you, and that we can't do our job without you. We need healthcare workers, we need staffing agencies, but we do need some rules. Thank you, Madam Chair. My main point that I'd like to make today is that no matter what the cost, no matter what the availability, residents in our adult care homes need care 24 hours a day. We need rules to make sure that whomever cares for them, whether it's our own staff or whether it's a staffing agency, are trained, have background checks, are competent, and that they come to work, they show up, they care. It's very important that we keep the resident in the front of this discussion because we do need staffing agencies, but we need some guidelines. We need some help, and ultimately the taxpayers will pay the bill if the rates continue to go up. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Linda. Next up, Haley Ordoin from Kansas Adult Care Executive Association. Hi, Haley.
Hello. Nice to see so many of you again. For those of you that I do not have the pleasure of knowing, my name is Haley Ordoin. I am here on behalf of the Kansas Adult Care Executives. We represent the administrators and operators of assisted living, skilled nursing, independent living sector. We are here as a proponent for House Bill 2524, and I'm going to talk about a couple of reasons why. First and foremost, there is a need for survey oversight of these agencies. They are often self-regulated. To our knowledge, there is no federal requirement, state requirement for inspection. There's not accountability for training or background checks or licensure or OIG. Any respectable and reputable would, but at this point, it's an assumption. It's not a requirement. We would also like, in this bill, to see the elimination of the buyout clause. Oftentimes, we've seen $3,000 to $10,000 buyout if we were to want to hire somebody from that agency, and there's not the same in reverse. We feel very strongly nurses should be able to come and go as they please for their employment and do so freely without penalty to them or to the providers. The provision for workforce coverage is workman's comp coverage is highly needed also. We've had providers who have had a workman's comp claim that the agency had stated they had covered, come to find out they weren't, and it costs the facilities over $100,000. There is also a need for the cap because most often, and you will see from further testimony, we are often being charged anywhere from 250% on the low end all the way up to over 1,800%. Again, you will see the proof in further testimony. When we receive daily reimbursement from the state, our average is about $200 in the state from the Medicaid system, so per resident per day. We are having multiple members that are being charged just that in the administrative agency fee, meaning if we have a CNA that is receiving $25 an hour from the agency for their pay rate, the facility is being charged $45 an hour. So 25 is going to the CNA, 20 is going to the agency for their administrative fees and cost. In a daily, schedule, that's more than what the facility receives from the state to be paid to provide all-inclusive services for an individual. Price gouging often is occurring, and as you heard previously, it is on a federal level. All right, we are just asking for the same expectations, accountability, and boundaries. There are great agencies and even better people that work for them out there. I want to be very firm on that. It's not the great ones we need protection from. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you all.
Next up, Jennifer Sauerk with Midwest Health. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Sauerk, but that's okay.
Sauerk?
Sauerk. It's common. It's okay. Jennifer Sauerk. I'm General Counsel for Midwest Health. We operate approximately 60 long-term care facilities here in Kansas, and we're the largest HCBS provider of assisted living in Kansas. This bill is really important to us for the protection of our residents. I want to emphasize the background checks and the expectations that we have of our staff members that work daily in our homes. We have to run them through 5 very specific and thorough background checks, including Adult Protective Services and through DCF, along with OIG, KDADS, and their licensing agency. We check all of those prior to hiring our individuals that work for us. If we're utilizing staffing agencies and their staff, there's no guarantees that those folks actually meet those expectations. And they could be on a KDAD's prohibited list. So all these protections that the state of Kansas has provided for our residents are not being enforced across the board on the staffing agencies. So globally, that's our position. We support the bill, House Bill 2524, and we'll stand for questions afterwards.
Thank you. Next up, Anthony Johnson with Recover Care.
I have my own timer too. I can be long-winded. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee, for hearing our testimony today. I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 2524. We represent 21 buildings across the state of Kansas. And a couple things I want to leave you with today. And in the exhibits are correspondence from staffing agencies, some things that are noteworthy in the contract, which we're beholden to. There's no opportunity to negotiate. We are informed that they reserve the right to increase rates at any time. This snowstorm that's coming today, they could decide to raise rates because it's more dangerous. That's been the trend. On Christmas this year, in my packet, you'll see we spent $122,000 to staff our building on Christmas Eve and Christmas. The evidence is in the packet, and that isn't sustainable. I'm a CNA myself. It's hard work. This is not an attack on caregivers. We've given multiple raises throughout the years. We can't keep up because the agencies will find out what we're paying, offer more, poach our employees, and then bill them back to us at 3 times the rate on Christmas. Like the previous conferees discussed, we see a value in agency. We want it to be a level playing field. We can't raise our rates to offset these exorbitant costs. And ultimately, the taxpayers in Kansas will pay the bill. We just want a level playing field, reasonable pricing, and regulations to ensure quality. Because if we don't, the trajectory we're on is caregivers could be potentially Uber drivers who decide to come when they want and increase the rates based on what's going on. I will cede my time and answer questions when appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more proponent, virtual, Charlotte Rathke with Locust Grove Village. Charlotte, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
welcome to the committee. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Charlotte Rathke, I'm the administrator at Locust Grove Village. We're a standalone, very rural in Rush County, Kansas, and I also am here to speak in favor of House Bill 2524. It used to be indeed that agencies supplemented our employment, but now they have become the dominating way that we can survive. And unfortunately, we cannot survive due to the high cost and different things that occur when we work with these folks. And I'll give you an example. We have literally 2 full-time employees on our day shift. We do not receive applicants. We haven't hired new folks in a long time. And I believe that's because the agencies give false sense to people who want to work in healthcare that you can work when you want to work. And unfortunately, resident care goes on 24/7, 365. And these costs get passed on to us. And we cannot compete with a $32 charge for a CNA when we're able to pay $17.25, or an RN at the $66 an hour when we're paying $40 for the highest nursing director that we have. All the mileage costs, everything that gets passed on, they don't have the overhead costs. They don't have the capital expenses. They don't pay bed taxes. They don't have expenses to buildings and upkeep that we do. And so Locust Grove Village faces the very real possibility that we cannot continue to care for elders in our community. We're a 5-star facility with excellent reputation and quality. We've already downsized our organization, numbers of healthcare beds to be able to try to offset the need for more workers by putting assisted living services in. But to give you an example, a very real, in our business in 2021, even with a 38-bed facility, we spent $352,704 in agency costs, $51,000 alone in December. And with all of that cost, guess what? Not one agency personnel was available on Christmas Day. It's not real, and therefore I support 2524 to help us to offset business practices that are going on with our agency companies. I've had personnel tell me that they're not to report their medical treatment because the owner doesn't want to foot the bill for the cost. I've had agency owners refuse to give me updated information on their insurance coverages. All of these things are business practices that concern us, let alone the gouged wages. These are ultimately passed on. They're passed on to our private pay residents through our increased costs per day that we have to recoup somehow, and they therefore run out of assets quicker and go on federal assistance. Those costs get passed on in our Medicaid cost reports that drive up the state of Kansas Medicaid budget and the ultimately taxpayers of this great state. We have to continue to be supported in Medicaid funding that we rely heavily on so that we can address wage discrepancies, become more competitive in the workplace. And most importantly, perhaps, we need to speak positively about healthcare and healthcare workers, and that this is a 24/7 business. It's a noble business. It's an important thing, work that we do each and every day, and that we should be proud of what we do in our buildings, in our communities, to support elders right here in the homes and the places that they call home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I show for proponent testimony. That is being provided orally. We have written only provided in your S file. So committee questions. I'll start us off with Jennifer Sauerk. Did I say it right this time? So you mentioned that DCF would have some kind of a
background check?
Background check there. I don't know why that left me, but how can you explain that?
Yeah, as an HCBS provider, which assisted livings, that's the Medicaid reimbursement tool for assisted living. And we operate about 40 of those assisted living in rural environments in Kansas. And through in order to receive reimbursement through Medicaid, HCBS, we have to comply with background checks, not just the KDAD's credentialing background check, not just their licensure background check, but also with Adult Protective Services and DCF as those background checks. In addition, any of our folks, and often in our assisted living environments, everyone kind of drives people to doctor's appointments and other transportation. So we have 4 or 5 employees at least who have to also then run a background check under the motor vehicle registration.
Okay, thank you. And you don't know that they have background checks, or?
Correct. Staffing agencies do not have to report that information, nor do they run that through KDADS or any of the other agencies. Even as an HCBS provider, it's not a requirement of their contract.
So they might do it, but
They might or might not. I think the fiscal report's notable. How I interpret it is that's currently not being done, hence the additional notes from KDADS.
Okay, thank you. And Anthony Johnson. So in your testimony that you sent in, there's an invoice there for $21,000. And it looks like it's just for 5 days. Is that correct, or am I reading it wrong?
I think it's 5 days.
5 days. Okay. And in your testimony, see if I can get back to it. There was a 12-hour shift for an RN.
That roughly made $5,000.
$5,000 for one RN.
Annualized $624,000.
Yeah, 5,025. That would be in his testimony under number 9. Okay, that's all my questions. Committee? Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Johnson, thank you for standing for questions. I appreciate it. I'll try to make it very quickly. In your testimony, you have a very well laid out testimony. It was very helpful. Thank you. You have in here under paragraph A, staffing, that their number 4, burnout is real. We're losing great people to other industries. Talks about how in paragraph B, COVID pandemic, item number 3, vaccine mandate implementation will result in driving more caregivers from the field, creating a supply and demand issues with the workforce. And in your testimony, you said that there was $122,000 that you were charged on Christmas Eve. But the most important part that stuck out to me was when you said ultimately the taxpayers in Kansas can or will be on the hook to pay the bill. As a small government individual, as someone who understands, as you say in your testimony, supply and demand, please explain to me how it is that you're asking for Kansas taxpayers to get on the bill now to subsidize and supplement your industry when it's just competition of supply and demand. If you are driving workers away with some of these policies, have you not been vetting these agencies? Are you taking people in who are Uber drivers, as you said? Where's the responsibility for the facilities? Help me understand that.
First and foremost, I'm not requesting that state of Kansas foot the bill. The way the cost reporting works, ultimately, if this isn't curtailed, it will be a taxpayer bill.
I'm sorry, maybe I was inartful with my comment. What you're asking us to do is place a wage cap and pick winners and losers. Explain that to me.
Yeah, I'd be happy to explain that to you. At this rate, there are going to be several nursing homes who won't operate anymore because it's not sustainable. It will create access issues, especially in the rural parts of Kansas. We cannot simply afford to pay these labor rates ongoing. It's going to be a disaster if something isn't done. Now, with burnout, it's a very nuanced issue. In one of my previous testimonies, I discussed our nurse leadership. The agency staff won't show up when they commit. And our nurse leadership are stuck working 23 hours and 59 minutes. And there are people who feel powerless and want to do good, but when they feel that they're all alone in providing the care to our vulnerable, that's how they burn out.
And thank you for that, sir. A quick question. Your private industry, private business charges these folks how much to stay in the facilities? How much would you say that you charge one of your residents?
Roughly $200 a day, give or take.
How much is that a week or a month?
It's about $1,500.
$1,500 for a month's worth of rent. Okay.
No, for a week.
For weeks. Okay. All right. The question that I'm struggling with is reading through all of y'all's testimony, is understanding how is it that the government is supposed to set a precedent to wage cap an industry and not allow the interplay of market pressures between supply and demand and set a precedent to socialize an entire industry. Please help me understand that.
If we were to go back to fee-for-service for Medicaid and Medicare, meaning we can run up a bill and submit it, that would level the playing field. Right now, our revenues are capped, and that's why we are crying for help.
Other questions? Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this could be a question for you as well, if that's okay. I'm also, I appreciate everyone being here today, and I'm really open to the intent of this bill, but want to make sure that we're also protecting nurses and ensuring that they're earning the wages that they deserve. And I think there are a lot of different elements to this, and I think the cap is also something I'm a little concerned about, just because, in Minnesota, for example, where we saw this implemented, they've had to deploy the National Guard to fill vacancies with nursing positions. And so I'm trying to understand, how was 150% arrived to? If the other provisions of this bill is implemented without the cap, do you think that makes it ineffective? Just hoping for a little bit more background on this number specifically, if you could, please. Thank you.
Although I'd like to take the credit for the 150% cap, I can't really speak to the mechanics behind it. I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
That was a core part, and I don't know, Madam Chair, if we know where the...
Someone else might want to address that.
Okay.
Rachel,
or perhaps as a comparison, the other states that have implemented this, is it also 150%? Do we know that?
I don't know this, and I'll share my opinion on Minnesota. I know they instituted a vaccine mandate way before other states, which did exacerbate the situation last fall with the Guard.
Rachel Monger.
Yes, Rachel with Leading Age Kansas. The 150% comes straight out of the Minnesota law, and for them, how they arrived at it was they believed that is how you level the playing field between our providers, who 70% of their revenue on average or more does come from taxpayers through Medicaid, Medicare, and the VA. And as Tony said, those revenues are capped, and there is no level playing field there. So when we talked to Minnesota about their model, we introduced this in 2020, so this isn't even a new bill. That is what they told us is how they arrived at the 150%.
May I ask a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Rachel. That's helpful. Do you know, are there, in the bill that is being presented today, or in the case of Minnesota, is there an ability to waive the cap in a public health emergency?
If there's I am sure, yeah, they're capable of doing that. I think any state would be, right? We do it in Kansas. We waived statutes.
Okay. I'm just trying to think through here. I appreciate your insight in that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, we have KEMA bill that we just passed. Did you have a question? Representative Wagoner.
For Rachel Monger, I suppose you'd be the best person. Rachel, just trying to wrap my head around this whole issue. Wages are basically what part of the operating costs? I mean, 75%? I mean, do you guys have some industry figures? Do you not?
I am going to turn to providers for that because I think they have a much clearer idea of where they're spending.
Okay, if maybe one of somebody, administrator.
Haley, okay.
Yes, Haley Ordoin, Kansas Adult Care Executives. I would agree that rate, the 75 to 80%, is a wage expense through our facilities.
So For your industry or for your operation, I mean, what percent of your wage or what percent of your employee hours are by staffing agency versus people that you hire?
Right now, what our members of our association are seeing is about 75 to 80% of our employment is through agencies right now. That did not used to be pre-pandemic. We have total buildings that have their whole second and third shift that are completely agency dependent. Another testimony I've given to other committees, our membership prior to pandemic was maybe using a staffing agency once a month, here and there, and now it is the norm.
I mean, I'm astounded by that number. You're saying 75 to 80% of your employee hours are subcontracted out through these agencies? I mean, are you out in western Kansas or someplace?
I'm actually from the 106th district up in Washington County.
Okay.
So I'm very rural. We are seeing that in western Kansas also.
Can I ask you a quick business person concept? I mean, if you're being hit by that much, I mean, why not raise your base rate for your regular people? I mean, from $20 an hour to $30 an hour.
There'll be no reactions, please. That happens again, I'll empty the room.
I'll be very happy to.
It's an honest question.
I would be very happy to give the answer. I would absolutely love, as a provider, to pay the staff what they are worth, because they are worth their weight in gold. They do not deserve $15 an hour for their jobs when they're holding the hand of someone that's dying, as opposed to a grocery sacker who holds an orange. I'm sorry, they are not the same.
Sure.
Would love to do that. However, as providers, we are capped based upon, we have our Medicaid reimbursement rate. That is 75, I would say on average, that is 75% of our resident population. So we are capped on a state level there. Our other residents who are private pay, we have to be within a certain range of what we charge them. Otherwise, they will, and what we're seeing is that we have a certain range. If we continue to price that at such a higher rate, they will exhaust their funds, become Medicaid eligible, and become dependent upon the state to pay their fee also. I hope that explained.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to move on. Thank you. To opponent testimony. Let's see, I don't show any neutral testimony. Is there anyone here to speak neutral? Okay, we'll move on to the opponent. And first up, we have wait a minute. First up, we were going to hear from Bob Lavinius with American Staffing Association, who's appearing virtually. And Bob, are you there? Bob?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
We are, for those testifying virtually, we have a timer, and I don't think you will probably be able to hear it, so I will interrupt you if you go over, but for now, you have 2 minutes.
I can see you. So I'm Bob Lavonius. Thank you for letting me testify on behalf of the American Staffing Association. We represent about 5,000 staffing agencies across the country. I've been in the industry for 30 years, run a bunch of companies. I'm still very involved in the association, have been a former chairman of the association. Our industry recognizes the reasonable regulations, and we have no objection to the provisions in HB 2524. That would require nursing agencies to register with the state, that would provide oversight or would establish a system for reporting complaints against the agencies or their employees. 14 states plus the District of Columbia have those same similar provisions. I would also point out that most staffing agencies are JCO certified, and they have all the requirements. You've talked about background checks, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, professional, all that has to be validated if you're going to be JCO certified. So the industry is widely regulated itself through JCO. However, as I said, we do not oppose the provisions to have your state force us to regulate because we don't have any objection to that. We do it in other states. It's not a problem. However, we do think those are reasonable, but we have very serious concerns about the provisions in 2524, Section 5, that artificially cap the nurse agency bill rates. And Section 4, which would bar staffing agencies from charging healthcare facilities a reasonable fee to recoup the agency's investment in recruiting, screening, and onboarding. I think it was said here, and some of the testimony already, the real issue here is supply. This is not about price gouging on the part of the nurse staffing. That is simply not the case. That is not what is going on. I sent a document over there that has a pie chart to it. And what you need to understand is that a study would show that of the staffing agencies that are out there, that's part of that, about 75% of the cost of the bill rate will go to the nurse, plus the staff, plus the statutory costs for payroll, workers' comp, unemployment insurance, background checks, testing, all of those things. And then so that leaves about 25 cents on the dollar. About half of that goes to running the branch or the operation, paying the recruiters, paying for marketing, paying for rent. So the average staffing company is making about 7 to 12 cents on the dollar. And if you're thinking that there's price gouging going on, it is simply the raising of rates that is taking place because nurses are demanding more. Let me give you a statistic.
Bob, you're over your time. Can you wrap it up?
Sure. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said that there were a loss of 430,000 jobs, and we are back since the pandemic in the nursing home sector. We are back to levels of employment that are 15 years ago. So our problem is supply, and nurses are demanding more money. I do think that once the pandemic slows down, this will change and those rates will come back down.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Okay.
Thank you.
Mona Meyer, RN. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and everyone. I come here today before you. I am Mona Meyer. I have my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I'm an RN. I've had the privilege of taking care of patients for 28 years, since 1991. I am obviously opposed to House Bill 2524, and due to time constraints today, I am going to skip down to my personal experience on my testimony, okay? Recently, I worked at a 32-bed long-term care facility, which was at maximum capacity. It was an Alzheimer's dementia facility. My staff consisted of 1 certified med aide, 3 certified nurse aides, and myself as charge nurse. Within these 32 patients, I had 6 hospice patients. I was responsible for assessments, wound care, 4 diabetics. I had 7 calls from family members, which I would not dismiss their calls. I had 2 falls and 1 state-mandated report, which was due to a patient assaulting another patient. I asked the unit manager why they were using agency. She replied, all her staff had quit. And I asked why that was, and she said, it is very difficult for 1 nurse to work 2 halls with 32 patients. I got that because I was doing that day, working that day, taking care of 32 patients with 1 RN. So let's place the blame where it truly lies. It is not on the staffing agency. If the long-term care facilities and the hospitals would not attempt to cut corners and staff accordingly and pay their staff for what they were worth, they wouldn't be required to use staffing agencies. Meanwhile, this CEO, which I found on the internet of U.S. Hospitals Today, is raking in $13.2 million a year. So who is the real winner here? It is not the medical staff. It is the CEO, is it not?
Your time is up. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate each and every one of you allowing me, and I ask you to vote this down. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you too as well. Andrew Weens. I saw him step out. Okay, Jonathan Walden with Walden Medical Staffing. Yeah. Okay. So, oh, you are both with Walden Medical Staffing. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for consolidating.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having us. My name is Casey Slaughter, and I represent Walden Medical Staffing, but more importantly, our 160 healthcare professionals and our employees. And additionally, are the partnership, the great partnership that we have with 50 facilities here in Kansas. HB 2524, what is it? Plain and simple. It's regulation through taxation. And when we regulate through taxation, what are we really trying to do? We're trying to disincentivize. We're trying to stop. We're trying to slow down. Things like cigarettes and tobacco. Used to be when I walked into the bingo hall with my grandmother, there was a cloud of smoke everywhere, and that's what went into my lungs every single week. It used to be, as a bowler, because I'm a bowler, I'd walk into the bowling center, cloud of smoke going right into my lungs. Thank God we finally had the foresight to regulate and tax that, because that was a public health crisis. What is a public health crisis now is the shortage of nurses. It is absolutely, unequivocally a supply and demand issue. That's what we're dealing with. That's the overlying issue. What would more staffing for these facilities look like? More staffing equals more residents. More residents equals more safety and less liability for these folks. Abuse and neglect possibilities go down. We have current facilities right now who've closed wings, closed their COVID units, and they talk to us because we have great communication with all of our facilities. And we say, why? Why are you closing? Because we don't have enough staff. We can't even provide enough. There's that many holes that we're trying to plug in. They never tell us it's because you're too expensive and we just can't do it anymore. They don't have enough staff. Compliance. I heard a couple things on compliance today. We do all these things that was talked about. We do the OIG. We do the KDEDS background check. We do the KSB and disciplinary history. We check all that. We check. We do CPS when required. We do APS when required. Whatever our facility requires is what we keep and what we hand over. And when they ask for it, you better believe there's a packet going right over. Otherwise, we keep them right in our file. Full capacity nursing homes and fully staffed creates more revenue for them. It creates a little bit of revenue to give to a staffing agency and maybe some revenue for the state left over. But right now, you're right, those facilities are hurting and those residents aren't there because there's no staff. The bottom line, though, out of all of this is quality care. Quality patient care. And just like Mona Meyer just testified, how do you provide quality patient care when everybody's tired and overworked and there's not enough staff? They're doing the work of 3 people. The wage cap, number 5, we have the biggest problem with this, obviously. And we actually have a really good partnership with the gentleman who spoke from Recover Care. And I can tell you unequivocally right now, and you heard it from my mouth, we have never and will never charge $5,000 for a nurse in a day. That is crazy. And I'll bet you I can speak on behalf of one of our competitors sitting right here at Trinity, and I know they haven't charged $5,000 for a nurse either. So that's shocking and appalling to us, too. Wage caps stifle competition, and it's totally anti-free market. The weighted average cost of a wage is what we're looking at here, and the secretary gets to decide. Well, I can tell you that's probably going to end up being about $12 an hour for a CNA. What does that mean we can charge? Roughly about 18. Out of that 18 now, we have to pay somebody a little more than that or a little more than 12 to go in and actually work. So, well, I split the difference, that's 15. Now we have $3 left over in our agency to pay for mandatory medical malpractice insurance, which is currently not required by our facilities. That's extremely expensive. We have to pay an annual fee of $2,035 to the state, and we have to pay admin costs to run the company. And the process is this. Jonathan, the owner, and myself, we don't just rake in the money and stick it in our pockets and go to Tahiti. We're working every single day. I'm a police officer by day, and I run this agency by night, and we work 24 hours a day, getting calls at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. And I hear my time, so I'll close with this, if I may. Thank you. What you're not hearing about Minnesota is that they have suspended their wage cap because of the pandemic. That's what they've decided. Okay, the pandemic, it's not just the pandemic, it's the flat out shortage of nurses everywhere. Everybody's hurting for CNAs, CMAs, and nurses. That's what they really need. Massachusetts, there's another state, they've done this. Well, they tried to raise their wage cap. And how did that work out for them? Well, they're still not drawing the nurses back to the state at all. So Connecticut, now they've jumped on board, they've thought about doing this. And now Connecticut had the hospitals come to the table and say, no, you cannot do this. Why? Because Massachusetts is hemorrhaging nurses to Connecticut, and they see what's going to happen. This is a total crisis that we're in, and medical staffing agencies play a huge role. Do we really want, and I provided that graph, do we really want our CNAs taking care of our most vulnerable, our elderly and our dependent adults, making the same as the person working at Brahms at the checkout serving ice cream, or at Costco running the cashier stand? I don't think so. I hope anybody would agree. We'll never gouge, I can tell you that right now, for Christmas. But on that note, who wants to work in Christmas Eve and Christmas Day? No, probably nobody in this room. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of a premium put on Christmas Day. I get it. They're tired. So I'm going to close with this. Taxation to achieve regulatory objectives disincentivizes private business and puts government in the business of picking winners and losers, as Representative Pence mentioned earlier. We want to make sure we keep our homegrown Kansas professionals, our nursing professionals, right here in Kansas. We don't want them going to Oklahoma, Colorado, and Nebraska, and Missouri, and anywhere else. We want to keep them right here. Our most vulnerable and our elderly deserve to have the quality care provided through the training experience of our own Kansas healthcare providers. And with that, I'll close and stand for questions.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Next up, Samantha Cook, CNA. And after her will be Amy Kelly. Hi, welcome to committee.
Thank you. I am Samantha Cook from Salina, Kansas. I have been a CNA since I was 16 years old. In fact, I turned 16 in the middle of my class. I'm coming to you as not only a CNA for an agency, but a family member who has had agency in their own home. My grandpa passed away February 7th of 2021. And we had the availability of having him at our home because of the fact agency could come into our home. I was able to help take care of him in his final moments and carry him out with them, versus if you were in a hospital or something, you wouldn't really be able to help them do that because of their regulations. On top of that, as a CNA for agency, I have obviously made mistakes since the beginning, but you learn from them. I called several places in Salina myself. The most a CNA would make at a nursing home is $11 an hour. The hospital only pays $14 an hour, and that's even with 5 or more years of experience. Brahms there starts at $15.50 an hour. Costco, Sam's Club all pay more than that. And I feel like the care that we give does not equivalent the care that a burger flipper or a cashier gives. I know they're not comparable, but yet somehow we're expected to work for less than they make. So I feel like capping agency, the nursing community is going to crash harder than anything else would, because we're already short-staffed even when we go in as an agency. There are a few agencies that are not reputable, but we as an agency, we care more about the family members and the care than we do the treatment we receive. Sorry.
It's okay. Done. You're doing great. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Amy Kelly?
I just want to say thank you guys for hearing me. My name's Amy Kelly. I am the owner of Trinity Nursing Staff and Trinity Hospice. We're based out of Salina, Kansas. I'm just going to read a little bit because I'm nervous. We do serve over 150 facilities in Kansas since when we started in 2017. And I want to say God has been a huge part in Trinity United. Me and my husband, we started this company from the ground up and have poured our heart and soul into this. Why? Because I am a nurse in Kansas. I am an LPN. And my dream was to help single moms and dads who were making less than what they were worth in the facilities. From the beginning, receiving timely payment for our services from the facilities has been difficult. I can tell you that on occasion, my husband Mo and I have gone without groceries to make sure our staff were paid that week. Trinity started with me and my best friend and has grown to over 250 members, which we are responsible for. We do background checks, we do provide health insurance, we do OIGs, drug screens. We provide everything, and the facilities require that, and we do give that to them. And we do provide competencies for them as well. We are proud to stand by that and operate out of faith and integrity. I am so proud of my staff and how they fearlessly and unselfishly help so many people. They are extremely hardworking and have pushed through every obstacle this pandemic has put in their way. They have left their families, sometimes for a week at a time, to help provide quality care to facilities in crisis. Half of the time, they are the only staff on the floor because the facilities are so short-staffed. Me as a nurse working in a facility, I have done the job of 3 people, a CNA working on the floor, putting people to a bed, being a med aide, and then doing my nursing duties as well. Several of my staff, they go to facilities in big corporate facilities where they should have the money to pay, and they're the only person on the floor with 45 residents. I just want to say, Trinity is based out of Kansas. We provide jobs to over 200 people in Kansas. We partner with 200 facilities in Kansas. We are here making a difference. We should come together with the nursing homes and the agencies and work hard together. If we're not against each other, this is for the residents. This is for your grandma, our parents. This is for people that we love and care for. And it's important that we make healthcare better.
Thank you. Next up, Kelly Summers with Kansas State Nurses Association.
Madam Chair and Committee, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today to talk on behalf of Kansas State Nurses Association, which represents RNs in Kansas, the largest association, and constituent members of ANA, which is the largest in our country. I honestly can't say anything better than what a lot of people have already spoken to. So I really think we need to look at what this comes down to, and that's this cap that is going to be required in this bill right now that's going to hurt us in regards to staffing and retention of nurses right now. As a nurse, I want those agencies to be there to provide me the coverage so that I can leave and go home and spend time with my family and take care of myself and give myself the breather that is much needed during this pandemic. I mean, these are people. These RNs, LPN, I'll start crying. These RNs and LPNs and CNAs are amazing. And I talk to nurses every single day and listen to these stories. And it is just heartbreaking that these people who went to school, who've been certified, who have been registered, that we're looking at salaries. Case put out last week in this in this same room where an RN should be paid $25 an hour. I have my baccalaureate degree in nursing. I have to maintain a license, and I have a lot of experience, and you want to hire me at $25 an hour? Now, I will say there are long-term care places that do an amazing job, and they have kept their staff. They have done what is needed through this pandemic, and they are role models, and that's who we should be looking at and having conversations with. Additionally, to all of the people that are in this room, let's sit down and have conversations. It's not happening. It's pitting companies against staff, and those staff are leaving because of that reason too. So I would like to point out a couple things because there's been a little bit of misinformation that was shared today for those who support this bill, and that would be regarding background checks. And I would like to include that right now we have that TNA position in House Bill 2477. That is an unsupervised course that's taken online, including a test, a 50 multiple choice test, unsupervised, and then to come in and to get 20 hours of training. According to KDADS, they are allowed up to 60 days from the time that a person is employed in long-term care to have a background check back. So those persons are providing direct care to our elders and to our seniors right now, and we have no idea. And I know the timer's going
Your
off.
time's
so
up.
I apologize to you, but can I just once again thank all of them for their hard work, because they're incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ginger Rose. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ginger Rose, and I'm speaking in opposition of House Bill 2524. In the last 2 years since COVID began, nurses were deemed heroes, essential workers. We have to ask ourselves why. Because they were doing a job that none of us wanted to do. They were asked to work longer hours, be taken away from their families, and forced to work against a virus that at the time was unknown and foreign in its deadliness. They were exposing family members, and due to different shortages, they were forced to wear the same PPE gear for weeks and months at a time, which is unfathomable to even imagine. I watched as they bravely came to work exhausted because they were expected to work longer hours. They didn't have enough staff to pitch in. And also because of these staffing shortages, they were also asked to work as kitchen servers and help. During the 18 months during lockdowns, nervous. During the 18 months during lockdown when family members were not allowed to come in and visit, these same people that you see right here stepped up to the plate. They took the place of you guys that could not go in. They gave care when you guys couldn't go in. They kept morale up. I even witnessed as they were teaching grandparents how to use FaceTime for the first time so that they could at least have a connection to the outside world. Now you're asking them to sacrifice even more by putting a cap on their wages. By having agency, it's allowing them to have days off with their families, pay off bills, and God knows the student loans that they have. Nurses are quitting and leaving the profession now at record rates, a profession that they love and don't want to walk away from. Why would they continue to work 12 to 16-hour days for $13 an hour when they can go to Spangles, McDonald's, and make a lot more than that? Medi's is starting out at $20 an hour. And you're asking these people to go back in and work some CNAs for $10 an hour.
Thank you. Your time is up. Stephanie McCurdy. Okay, written only. Thank you very much. So we have virtual Colby Martin. Colby, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a nurse here in Kansas also. I've been a nurse for 12 years. I've spent a lot of my career in long-term care, part of it as a manager, and I am with the others. The only time I could sometimes even get a day off was through the use of staffing agencies. And I am completely for them. I work at a staffing agency myself now for extra money. And I had sent a link to Fran Lusk this morning with a petition I started with over 700 signatures opposing this bill. I am just asking why nurses are the only ones being targeted, why we're not entitled to the privileges that come with a free market. I think this is a thinly veiled attempt to pit taxpayers against nurses, especially with the execs that are stating, oh, you, the taxpayers, are paying this, you're paying it with Medicare and Medicaid. Yes, nursing homes are funded by Medicare and Medicaid, but 70% of these homes nationwide are also for profit. And I don't know of any other industry that for-profit business that is funded by taxpayers, Medicare and Medicaid, could then further inflate their profits by capping the wages of their workers. And as an example, Genesis Healthcare is one of the largest for-profit nursing home chains in the country. An article published in the Washington Post in January of 2021 listed the CEO George Hager's base salary at $900,000, with a $935,000 annual bonus and a $5.2 million retention bonus. And Genesis also for the fiscal year 2020 listed a profit of $3.9 billion. And they want to further inflate this by taking wages away from the agencies who are coming in and saving them, taking care of the elderly during this pandemic, risking catching this virus and taking it home to their families. We've been there. We have seen people die in front of us. And we know every time we go to work, I might catch this, I might die, I might take this home to my family. And we've kept showing up. And that's why I feel like we are entitled to the wages that we're making now. Yes, they're higher than pre-pandemic, but there's a reason for it. It's the danger factor.
Colby, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Hart, LPN, it's virtual.
I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I am the Director of Marketing and Compliance for Trinity nursing staff, and I am here obviously speaking in opposition to this bill. We've all discussed the wages, but what we haven't touched on so much is that driving down these wages, besides forcing our employees to leave the field, we're going to put people back on state assistance programs, back to having to use food stamps. And when it comes down to that, it's no wonder that they would go somewhere else to help pay their bills. But honestly, if the nursing shortage isn't bad enough already, let's do this and see what happens. You won't find a contract worker to come to this state with a bill in place like this. It won't happen. These guys and gals are out there, you know, some of them risking their own lives. I can't work on the floor anymore. My husband is a cancer survivor and I can't take that risk. But some of them do. They risk the health and wellness of their own family members, you know, and nothing is more fulfilling to us as a management team than to see a single mom that came out of a terrible situation. She comes to work for us. She starts making a reasonable living wage, and maybe she can buy a new car, a more reliable transportation for her children, maybe a more safe and secure home, or maybe even further her education on what she's now able to support her family with. Workers are not going to go back to making $10, $11, $12 an hour. And I would suggest that maybe we look at the federal CMS reimbursement rate. Let's increase that some. There's a lot of work that could be done there. Let's trim some of the fat off these CEO salaries and give it back to the people that are providing floor care and actually doing the work. There's a lot of room for improvement here, and capping the wages of agencies and their employees is not the solution to this problem.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Your time is up. Next up, Kristin Brookshire, LPN.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome.
hi, thank you for the time today. I'm actually an LPN, have been for 11 years. I'm calling from a hotel room in Oregon. They had a declaration that they needed assistance with nurses, and I also work as an agency nurse in Kansas most of the time, but even I live in Hutchinson, and there wasn't very many job opportunities unless I drove to Wichita. So when this contract came up to make $50 an hour and they pay for hotel, housing, transportation, all of that, I jumped on it. I jumped on the train to go to New York to help when COVID had just hit. It was insane. I really didn't make that much money after New York took taxes, but I wanted to help. I came back home and my job was no longer available for me. And at that, I was only making $18 an hour. I just quit a job where I was the assistant director of nursing, and the staff there burnt out. Nurses, we couldn't get anyone to stay. And I only stayed for 2.5 months because making $22 to $23 an hour around the clock, trying to beg agency nurses, begging our regular staff to come in, it wears on you so quickly that this is our only chance to even breathe as a nurse anymore is if we take agency jobs or take a travel position. These times right now are unprecedented, and we cannot be capping what we know that we are worth when we do these agency or these travel nurses, that we're actually appreciated, to know what our worth is every day, because the staff tells us, oh my God, thank you so much for coming in. And we do get drug tested, background checks. I even have way more testing that has to be done since I have a Kansas compact nursing license, and more than what most nurses have to do on the daily. But that's what we do in order to survive. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, committee, that's all of the oral testimony that we have. Draw your attention to written only. So we've had one or two. Oh, do we have one more? Sorry, I don't have you listed. Go ahead, come forward. Tell us your name. Is the microphone on? Thank you.
Okay, I'm a registered nurse for Trinity. My husband is a sheriff's deputy in Ottawa County, and we have 2 children, 3 and 2. Working for Trinity hasn't been just another job, it's been a saving grace. I worked for Trinity as an LPN before getting my RN, and I had the opportunity to go to school and further my education, even with 2 young children, which is nearly impossible these days due to expenses. During this time of balancing school and work, my husband got sent to the academy in Hutchinson, Kansas State Law Enforcement. Which meant I had to work even less, and dropping out of school was definitely something I had to consider in order to make a living and raise 2 kids. But since Trinity, we were both able to go and get an education. Without Trinity, I wouldn't have been able to do that, and we wouldn't be where we are today. Looking at where we are now, it still helps my family in so many ways. With my husband working as a sheriff's deputy, he has crazy hours and is unable to work a set schedule, which almost all nursing homes and hospitals require you to do. With Trinity nursing staff, I am able to choose which days I can work and how many hours a week I'm able to work, which is necessary with my husband's schedule. Another really important thing that with the higher wages of working for an agency is we don't get paid PTO or vacation time or sick time. Other employees at nursing homes and hospitals get all that sick leave, especially in today's world with a pandemic and quarantines, sickness. The higher wages with agency employees is very important to get us by when we have to take off work for that stuff. These facilities are also, like on Christmas when they were saying that they pay a lot more money, a lot of times their own staff won't come in, so they will be like, we'll offer a $300 bonus for you to come into our facility and work because we can't get our staff there. So a lot of those higher wages are them offering us more. Another thing is that the high wages allow for us to drive because mileage isn't increasing, but gas prices are. We still get paid that set mileage, but we also have to have gas in our vehicles to get there. And that mileage that we're getting doesn't even cover that, let alone the maintenance for our vehicles. So, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for honoring the time limits. I apologize that we had to shorten it. So anyway, as I was saying, draw your attention to several, over 20 pieces of written only that are in your S drive. So we'll close the hearing. I promised Representative Penn could ask one question. We are going to have to vacate this room, so we are not, there's another committee coming in, so we are not going to be able to ask questions. If you want to move out in the hall, then representatives, we can go out and find, but truly appreciate all the personal stories and appreciate all that you do in healthcare, both the facilities and the staffing employees, as well as the facility employees. We really do appreciate all of you who are in this healthcare field. Representative Penn.
Madam Chair, you grace me. Thank you so much. I would like to ask a single question of Mr. Jonathan Walden, please, from Walden Staffing. I'm looking at your written testimony, and I would like for you, in the space of Madam Vice, 1 minute, please tell me about your mother's story, your patients, and how this poverty plays into it, please.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for allowing me to be here. So I'm the owner of Walden Medical Staffing, and I just want to start off by telling you guys that I was very poor growing up. My mom was a CNA and is now a nurse, but I watched her struggle, work double shifts just so she can make ends meet, raising 3 boys. And there's many times that I went to work with her and saw how hard she worked. And I just want to talk about all the staff that I have working for Walden Medical Staffing and providing care to all of our facilities. These folks out here are those same CNAs that are providing that same care, and they deserve their weight worth in gold. I want to talk about lifting our folks out of poverty. Everybody wants to be able to make a decent living, and this is their way. This is their way to be able to provide for their families, provide for their kids, and to be able to go back to school and to better themselves. So please think about the opposition of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close the hearing after that question. I just will say that, we've been hearing about this issue in Care Oversight Committee and in the Senior Care Task Force, that there is a crisis of the workforce. And both sides on this issue have said that you want to look for answers to the problem. This is a bill that was brought as a possible solution. If there are other solutions, let's hear more communication. We've got to do something. We've got to find some way to move forward on this. And whether this is the answer or if you've got something else, please let us know. And we're willing to look outside the box. But this has been a long time coming. And like I said, we've been hearing about it for months, if not actually for years. This bill was filed 2 years ago, and we had a hearing on it then as well. So it's been around for a while, but we are at crisis point now with workforce. We don't want people to lose their job or cut in pay, but we also don't want facilities to close. So thank you, everybody, and committee will see you tomorrow, but watch for weather information.